Hey guys, welcome. It's Coach Josh from CrossFit MetroEast. This is our Live Healthy MetroEast podcast, and it's been a while, to be perfectly honest, getting through the holidays and getting through the start of the year. We had a very busy January in the gym, and then obviously, everybody's traveling and then coming back and getting after it again. And so it's been a while since we've recorded anything. But today I have Kole Jimenez with us. He's one of our coaches. He's been a member for a long time with us as well. And so we just spent a little time with him today to learn a little bit more about his story, how he got started exercising in general, and then how he started with CrossFit MetroEast, and then now where things are at with Coach. And so, Coach, welcome.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah. So obviously, you have a pretty big history in fitness and through the military. Tell me a little bit about your story. Tell me how you got into exercise. Maybe even did that exist for you when you were younger, and how that all worked out, and then how you kind of gotten to where you're at now?
Yeah, okay. For sure. Definitely when I was young, athletics was a part of my life. And as we'll kind of see as the story goes through the years, mostly not, I would say not CrossFit style, but more very cardio focused from a young age. Did play sports, when I was little, into baseball was always kind of my primary sport. And then as I got into high school, a little bit more track and field, football, of course, through high school. And that's where I got primarily into lifting weights, would be in high school. That was kind of my experience before coming to CrossFit Metro East on the actual lifting side of the house. But as a kid, just really loved baseball. And I grew up in the mountains in Northern California, so a lot of time outdoors, out hiking, bike riding. And I really fell in love with track and field. My dad was a college track athlete. My grandpa would go down to the California championships and take us down there and just watching athletes in track and field. So, and they taught me about like Bowerman and the runners at Oregon and Steve Prefontaine. So those were kind of some of my heroes growing up outside of baseball. So I always wanted to be, and then this was also the explosion of Ironman. So watching Mark Allen and some of these athletes, like that's what I wanted to do. I remember just being so enamored. Stacy, my wife, still has to sit through, 4 hours of me just watching athletes on the Big Island every year, watching the Ironman, because I just love that human spirit connection. And I think that's what I saw from a young age, was these people just battling, taking, their bodies to the very limits, right? And I used to love that. So
Well, and the West Coast, I mean, California is a different experience when it comes to track and field. That they're a powerful. There's a big following in the sport in track and field and on the West Coast, and so I can only imagine when you're like being younger and experiencing some of that, and like you talk about with and some of the guys at Oregon. I mean, like that was prime time when it came to track and field for sure.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
then how did from the time, from being in high school, doing some weightlifting with sports and football, track and field, how did that then evolve for you as you got out of high school?
A big thing for me was, and it's something to this day, I don't know if you want to call it body type or just different genes, but I've always been kind of a bigger, stockier guy. In football, it, pigeonholed me into certain positions or whatever. But then when I got out, I was not really looking to go to college and play any kind of sports. Baseball is probably the only area where I even had a chance at that to really be any good. And so ended up joining the military, and weight was going to be an issue. It was like, hey, I got to drop down. In high school football, I was tight end, defensive end, one of the bigger guys always trying to get bigger. And now it was like, hey, you need to slim down. And and so I joined a junior college cross country team just to run and lose some of that weight. And that was a fun experience. But then it was all about prepping for the military. So all of a sudden there was this, instead of bench pressing or seeing if I can run, 10 miles, 12 miles, it was, hey, let's get really fast at a mile and a half. Let's focus in on push-ups, sit-ups, some of that. And then for a long time, that was really just my focus, was, making sure to get ready for that PT test. But always, I would say my love with athletics always was a battle with trying to keep that weight off. And so at some point in time, I remember being like, hey, I love to run long distances. I'm running 6 miles, 7 miles. I can't gain a lot of weight and be a marathoner. So let me run a marathon, and that'll keep the weight off. And then I just became I would say I have an obsessive personality. So when I find a sport that I really like, I just obsess about it. And so then it was reading every book I could on marathon prep and how to do that. And for years, that was my focus. I would say for a good 15 years, that was my focus, was just shifting to that.
And that was while you were in the military.
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
when you're doing that. What made you want to join the military at a young age?
That's a great story. I actually did not want to join the military. And I would tell everybody this when I was in the military, even when I was a leader within a unit, a lot of people be like, oh, that person joined and they don't really love the military, and be like, well, let's give them some time, let's let it grow. I was actually, when I was in high school and stuff, I was very focused on wanting to like be a doctor or go into business. It was going to be one of those two routes, right? I wanted to, and some of that was just led by a desire to kind of come out of not that I grew up super poor, but like an economic status that I just wanted to kind of elevate. That was a lot of my focus coming out of high school, was I'm going to make some money. And so I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a businessman. I'm going to go to Wall Street. But then it was also, I got hit with this brick coming out of high school that was like, well, your grades aren't great enough to get a scholarship. Your sports aren't good enough to get a scholarship, like a really good one, that'll pay for it. And your family just doesn't have money for that. So what are the options? And uh, a lot of people know I've, been married to Stacy since right after high school. We were dating through high school, and my wife, I'm lucky to have found somebody at a young age who was very uh, no nonsense. And I can remember coming out of class one day and I was just like, I'm so frustrated. I'm not going to be able to pay for college. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into so much debt. And she was like, why don't you we just talked to an Air Force recruiter. Why don't you go to the Air Force? Like I mean, that solves your problem. They'll pay for college. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. There's no way. I am not a military guy. I was proud of the military. My grandpa was a Marine in World War II, a lot of pride in the military, but I was like, that's just not really me. But the more I started to think about it, I was like, wow, that's a really good idea. You actually, like, you're right on, spot on. And so decided, what the heck, I'll give it a shot. It does pay for my college education. I'll do 4 years, get out, and I can go then pursue all those dreams without a lot of debt. And then when I got in the military, I just really loved it. The experience was great. I didn't want to go see the world. I wanted to go back to the West Coast. I put anywhere on the West Coast, please station me there. They sent me to Germany right off the bat. Like, they did not care where I wanted to go. And that was great. That was just one of those examples of where you don't always know what's best for you. Uh, and so got to go see Europe and, tour around, and then had a kid. And then it was like, okay, well, now you're a dad. You really got to think about this career. And then they sent me to Hawaii. So I had a great, station after Germany, and, had my second son, Seth. And then it was just kind of like, well, the military is really paving this way, right? And I went into computers, kind of fell into it, and so that was one of those things where it just kind of continued from that point. But I always felt that love for fitness while I was in there, and that love for, you know trying to stay fit. And I saw a lot of people struggling with it. And my current boss, actually, on the commercial side, was my supervisor back then, and he kind of saw this. We'd go out for runs every morning, and they would call me coach at the time, because I would tell them, like, hey, if we really want to get better at this, or if we want to make that half marathon, we should follow this plan, and we should do sprint workouts on Tuesday, do some tempo runs on Thursday, right, and then a long distance on the weekend together. And then it grew, and we ended up having like a group of 10 people that would go out on the weekends, not just military people, but like a running group in our community. And so they'd always call me coach, because I'd be out there always like, okay, we need to work like this, or hey man, you're slouching a little bit, on your run, and loosen up your arms, whatever it is. And I just always loved that. And that supervisor at the time was like, hey man, I think you'd be really good as a fitness instructor in the military, and you like to do these things, and it's kind of, you get a little obsessive about it, so let's put that to work. And then, yeah, that was the first time back as, a staff sergeant in about 2008, when they kind of put me to work doing fitness programs. So
So you did that. Did you do that through now? Did you retire
yeah,
from when did you retire from the military?
2022. So yeah,
Okay. And
22
so
years.
did you do that from '08 to 22 essentially, or did you stop that after a certain amount of time?
Yeah, you should actually. I should have ranked out of it, and I did eventually rank out of it. I mean, that was an additional duty that, military is all about additional duties. So cyber comm was my primary duty, but they always had assigned me as both a physical training leader and a unit program manager. And a lot of times they like to cycle so you get different experience, but I'll just be honest, I loved it so much. I was like, yeah, you're just everywhere I went, nobody ever wanted that additional duty. And so I was always like, yeah, I love it. I'll take it everywhere I go.
That's
And
awesome.
so eventually as a senior NCO, it's kind of like one of those where it's like, maybe you shouldn't be doing this anymore. Like, you have other additional duties and your job is taking up so much time. So after a while, I kind of just dabbled in it. A lot of times I just keep my name on the list. So that way, if I needed to sign something or if I needed to get in and talk to a physical training leader about like, hey, why are we doing this workout on a Thursday? Like lifting legs when we just lifted legs the day before or running sprints twice a week. So I'd always kind of dabble in it still, but it wasn't officially my title anymore. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can resonate with that. As you obviously now at this point, like I do a lot less coaching than any of the rest of our staff, and you do get to those certain points where it's kind of like those pieces of, as you elevate, there are certain things that you have to focus your time on more. But and I think I'm hearing this a little bit from you too, is like, yeah, but the thing we love to do most is the coaching side. Like that
Hmm.
I never tire of being on the floor or working with people on the floor from a coaching perspective. And so it's really hard to like take that hat off sometimes, even though you're wearing a lot of other hats, within your career. So then how did you find, I know this story, but for the listener, how'd you find CrossFit Metro East and how'd you get started with us here?
Yeah, I'll talk about where I found CrossFit and then where I found CrossFit Metro East, or at least the first time I heard of CrossFit first.
Yeah. Okay.
So all those years of running and thinking I knew how to make a good runner. I had a friend from high school, best friend in high school, who he'd also joined the military and then he got out of the military and you didn't get to see him a whole lot, but he ended up moving down to San Antonio where I was at. And from a running stand, I won't say from an athletic standpoint, he was a better football player than me, but from an athletic standpoint, I always kind of like I was always faster, always could move more. And he met up with me and he's like, "Hey, I really want to work out with you." And I was just like, that's kind of weird, but okay, cool, let's work out. Like I'm always down for that. And we ended up doing this CrossFit workout. He was like, I got this workout I'd like to go through. And I was like, okay, it's running. It was like 400 repeats, and then we'd come back and do some kind of lift. And I just remember he whooped me, and I was like, "How is how is he faster than me on this? Like he's never been faster than me in his entire life, and I've known this kid since second grade." Like, and he was like, "Oh, I've been doing CrossFit. It's this great workout regimen. Like it just incorporates everything." And I was like, "Huh, that's interesting." This is about the time P90X had come out, and there were some things. So I was kind of like, "Well, maybe I'll dabble in some of that somewhat functional fitness, doing some more pull-ups and some other things." But this CrossFit's also kind of like I don't have a tire to go slam with a, you know, hammer or anything like that. So,
What everybody
so
thinks CrossFit is
what
just
everybody thinks CrossFit
sledgehammer.
is,
Yeah,
right?
that's just like that's
Right.
all we do around here.
Yeah, exactly. And tire flips. And I was just like, it's interesting. Maybe I'll look into it a little bit. But then years went by. I mean, another 10 years later, and I had this high speed airman, a lot of energy that got assigned to my unit, Jamie Knight. Many people in CrossFit Metro, we still know her. And she knew I was very into PT and that I'd go out and work out a lot. And a lot of times there was a couple of us that we'd go for after work runs. And on these runs, she would just talk about CrossFit, and oh, at my gym, it's so great, and this coach, and this person, and she'd talk about some of our members that were older that could lift amazing weights and doing some things, and I was just like, yeah, I get it. CrossFit's great. Like that's all you ever talk about. She said she never really did a lot of running, like straight out running all the time, but yet she was always able to keep up on every workout with me and a lot of times beat me. And like we'd play ultimate frisbee a lot. It's kind of an Air Force chuckle that we play a lot of ultimate frisbee in the Air Force. but a lot of sprinting and cutting and doing all these things. And I remember one of the first times I met her, she was all over the place, right? Just tons of energy. And so through our runs, just ultimately, she was like, "Hey, you should really. We're doing a bring a friend. You should really come out and check it out." And I'm one of these people who doesn't like to miss out on anything. If you ask me to go do something, I'm gonna probably go do it. And so I was like, "Fine, yeah, I'll try it if we can go check out this CrossFit thing." And I was really struggling with the strength component. Like I knew this. I was starting to realize that years of cardio weren't really paying the health dividends that I hoped that they would do. I was still one of the best runners in my unit, could beat most people in a run, but was struggling with push-ups and wasn't seeing the body makeup that I wanted. Right at this point, I was doing a lot of triathlon and just because of the wear and tear of the running, but just not seeing the form that I wanted. And so I tried it out. I was like, yeah, I'll go try this. And I remember going to one workout and I was like, that was really cool. Like that was what I wanted, was that sweat at the end of a workout and actually working on some fitness. It didn't take much to convince me. I think one workout and I was like, yeah, that's worth it. So
Yeah, those bringer friends usually do like one of two things. They either like, and you know, we used to do it a lot more often. Now we try to make it a little bit more of an event, and so we don't do it as frequent throughout the year. But I think they're great opportunities for people to, because a lot of times you'll talk to someone about what they're doing, but to see it in action is very different. And but what I will say is like there's kind of two. There's some that will come and be like, man, that was awesome. I'd love to do that. And how do I sign up for this? This is exactly what I was looking for. There's others like, man, we are no longer friends. Like like you brought me here and this is not okay. I did not enjoy this. Get me out of here now. So,
right.
and
Yep.
to be perfectly honest, there's probably a third school that's like, hey, that's pretty cool, but maybe I don't want to do that all the time. But yeah, I
Right.
don't I don't remember it taking much convincing to get you going because
Mm.
it scratched an itch for you for sure.
It did. A lot of things hit it. Sometimes things just have to come together at the right time. I say now, man, I wish I had gotten back into CrossFit back in 2002, right? Or when I was first in the military. Like, I really wish as it was growing, I would have grown with it, or at least even just functional fitness, whatever you want to call it. Weight training is and strength training has really added a good dynamic to what I do. But I think my other thing was we were coming out of COVID at that time. And I was so tired of through COVID just heading to the pool, swimming by myself, go on a long run by yourself, right? And you do all these things, bike rides. You might get a group workout once in a while, but most of your work is by yourself. And I think coming in and getting that group aspect that I've loved for years in military PT, a lot of military people hate PT. I loved it. It was the best, we say now the best hour of your day in a CrossFit gym, but like back in the military, that 6 o'clock in the morning, you know, sweating with my fellow military members was the best hour of the day, right? And CrossFit offered that kind of, coming out of COVID, that was really appealing to me, not just the workout style, but also that group dynamic.
And if you're, as you think about it too, I think one of the things that's attractive to people that have maybe done any sort of like team sports throughout the years. Now, you had it from a perspective of like a team within the military, but you also had it even through baseball and football and track and field. And even though
Hmm.
track and field can be an individual type, performance sport,
Yeah.
you still had that camaraderie of running with others and having that, even mentioning like having that kind of a little bit of a running club when you
Hmm.
were doing more long runs and things like that. And so having that, if you will, misery loves company, right? And so
Hmm.
having that
Yep.
group aspect of everybody working hard towards common goal of getting healthier matters a lot. And then obviously to elevate that through a time where we were so isolated for a while through
Yeah.
COVID, like that definitely could only increase the desire to do that. So,
Yep.
what made you? Obviously, like, you've been a coach, and so some people look at it as like, oh, Cole's a new coach. Well, on our floor, you're a new coach. But really, you've been a coach for a really long time through the military, even prior to being actually assigned that, it sounds like. What made you want to become a coach on this side of things when it came to doing CrossFit coaching?
I think there's a desire to, A couple things that I'll just talk about at inspirations. One is that whole, I'm a pretty philosophical person, but don't always walk the walk on the philosophies as far as like, hey, you should do what you love, right? And then you'll never work another day in your life. We hear that saying sometimes. And this was always the part that I loved about being in the military over all other duties, right? And now outside the military. I have an opportunity to actually hone in on that craft. Like coaching is definitely a craft. You're never perfect at it. You always think that, you know, there's things that you can get better at. And so just kind of seeing that and thinking, I can sit on the sideline and I can continue as an athlete, but if what I want to do in my life is to continue to help people in fitness and be in that fitness environment, like I need to start and continue. I'll only get better through coaching. And so while in CrossFit, there's a lot of movements I'm still working on. I'm definitely in that average Joe kind of department. You're gonna throw yourself into it more if you're learning those movements and really dialing it in. If I was coaching, I knew that I'd be able to provide more there. And then just also just that desire to be helping people, seeing people get better at fitness and achieve things that they've never done before, is to me the ultimate drive. Like if I could go into a gym every single day and help people get towards a goal like that's like the perfect day, right? If you were to say how you going to spend that last day on earth, like that's it. I would just love to go in and spend that time helping people. And I just wanted to be close to that environment and continue to do that and hone in that craft. Even in my 40s starting out, and like you said, did it for years in the military, but learning different methods in the military. I can say, um, hey, go do this. We're running 6 400s and we're going to do it in this time. Get your butt moving. Let's go. That doesn't work so well sometimes in a gym environment. I mean, there might be an aspect of it, but you got to meet everybody where they're at. And and that day might be a bad day for them, and just helping them hit just where they're at. Or some days it's that +1. And I was just learning all those different aspects of coaching. I just wanted to get started. I didn't want to wait any longer. There was an aspect of like, hey, maybe I need to do CrossFit for 10 years and really be a master class in Olympic moves, or bring to the table what I already have and then develop those other things as we go. No, I can't hear you, Josh. There we go. Yeah, yeah.
I tried to mute myself because the music got louder, so I don't know how bad the music is going to be on this podcast, but we'll find out. I think the whole idea, right, is like, oh, I'm going to wait until I'm really good at this before I start doing this. But the reality is like, you'll never be as good as you could be if you just don't just start, right? And one of the things I say is, because sometimes, I think sometimes people can give a newer coach a bad rap, or maybe I will say, like, we go through a process with all of you that before we put you on the floor, it's pretty significant of a training experience that we do value the product that we put on the floor. And so we want you to be at a certain level to put you in the best, put your best foot forward and be successful. That being said, is that the expectation that you and I are going to be at the same level of coaching, with the difference of how long I've been coaching CrossFit versus how long you've been coaching CrossFit. But the reality is like, I had to be a first year coach in CrossFit at one point. Like I had to be that first year to get to year 17. And so it will, and if I waited, if I said, oh, I'm just going to wait to get my level 1, or I'm going to wait to start coaching people in CrossFit until I know more and all this stuff. But guess what I've done in the time? I'm sure you could say this. In the time you've been coaching for us, you've probably learned more working with people on the floor than you ever will in a certification. Or like, it's not that knowledge isn't important. It's not like that information isn't important, but your interactions with people, being able to scale and modify on the floor, being able to correct exercise on the floor, while it may not be perfect, like you mentioned, it never will be, right? Because I can't tell you exactly how to cue and correct a squat unless I know exactly who you're working with. Well, the book doesn't tell you exactly who you're working with every time. You only get that knowledge and that experience on the floor. And so I'm a big believer in trial by fire. Now, Do I want to set you up for success and put you in the best possible position to succeed? Absolutely. Do I want you to be knowledgeable and understand things? Sure, absolutely. But the number one thing I tell our coaches, and I know I've said this to you guys before in our on ramp process as coaches, is that listen, the number one thing I need you to do for people, there's two things, the two rules I have for you first and foremost, and they go above coaching is number one is care for these people, right? Just care about them, right? Number one.
Hmm.
Number two, keep them safe. Number
Yeah.
three, let's get them a good workout, right? But number one and number two have to happen. And so those are like my prerequisites. Now, and then number three, get them a good workout. You can get them a good workout without being like a top star coach either. Sometimes actually the best coaches don't do a great job of giving somebody a great experience, right? Because maybe
Mm.
they're too intellectual. Maybe they speak above the person to be able to, like, so the person actually just feels like they're drinking through a fire hose and they're like, I don't know what you want me to do now, coach. Right. And so,
Yeah.
those are our number one rules. And the other thing I always say is like, listen, I just need you to be a good person and care about these people. We can make you a good coach, but making you a good coach comes from gaining experience on the floor. And, so I'm so glad that you didn't sit on the sidelines and wait to get to a certain level that you felt like you needed to be at before you jumped in and just started.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm very glad to have started. You know, you can always question and say like maybe another year of seasoning or 2 years of seasoning, but the truth is, I saw this in a YouTube recently, I think, or something that talked about like not knowing and knowing. Like there's that space in between that's called the learning space, and that's where the frustration and the friction happens. And if I had just decided, well, I want to continue to learn. And someday when I feel like I'm up to a level, become a coach. I'm not working on all those soft skills like you talked about, right? How to deal with individuals and are they, and make sure they have a good experience, right? Those are some of those key pieces, caring about the people. But even if we want to look at the technical piece, like when I know I'm going to be coaching a class, I might, let's just say the back squat. I think I have a pretty good back squat. I know how to do a lot of the technical movements. I know how to, I've been to the L1 and I've, can coach the basic mechanics. I'm still going to spend an hour myself, probably reading through books or looking at videos or even recording myself and breaking down my own movement before I go teach that class so that I know I'm giving a good demo, that I'm hitting some key points that I can show some folks. I'm probably not going to do that if I was just, in a squat class on Tuesday. I'm going to take that extra level to prep and make sure we have a good coaching experience for people. And just, you got to kind of throw yourself into that situation where you're going to have to do that prep and hold yourself to that standard versus just, oh, I'll let it organically happen and someday I'll be good enough to coach. Like I just felt like I needed to get into that learning place. So,
You're absolutely right that you do hold yourself to a certain standard that is higher when you put that coach shirt on, and it's a big deal. Like it is a designation, and I'm really glad that you shared a little piece about like how much prep goes into your delivery on the floor because I think what the client sees and the people in the class, they see the delivery, right? They just see like the live version of this. What they don't see, it's like
mhm,
the iceberg, right? They see the tip of that iceberg. They don't see all of the other things that go into this. Like, our coaching staff has a class plan that they have to follow. They have a timeline. They have scales and modifications that they need to know and adjust for. Aside
mhm,
from actually then handling just the interpersonal connections with people on the floor, right? To be really good at the interpersonal stuff, to be really good at like giving a great workout and having an enjoyable experience for the client, you have to really know your stuff. Like you have to be really
right,
comfortable with, oh, this is the timeline that we're following today, and this is the modifications I'm going to use. And I already know all this stuff, and I've studied all this stuff so that I can be my biggest self on the floor and create a great experience for the clients. And
right,
I think that's really important because I don't know that people realize that the prep happens far before you actually step onto the floor.
yeah. That's the
So
part I think that shocked me the most coming into coaching is I knew there would be some prep, but seeing the level of prep and knowing the level of prep that I see other coaches go into right? And we have these conversations, man, I was asked about this adjustment and this is the way I went, how does this look? Or, hey, we're coming up on this session, the conversations we kind of have in the background, whether it's a chat or whatever of, what's the best way to modify this movement for this workout? I know I have this individual that has this limitation, right? And the coach is sharing it. There's just so much thought. All the coaches are putting in a ton of prep work, and nobody's just showing up to the class and, oh, what's the workout today? Cool, right? They've, the prep work might have been a week before when the first workout came out and they had to, re-prep themselves or something like that. I still find myself looking back at the board too often to be like, was that 10 reps or is it 8 reps here? Um, but the littlest things, using people's names and addressing them and making it a personal experience for every individual. Like there's so many little things that, CrossFit Metro East really tries to dial in. That's perfect.
Well, we talk about that as the art of coaching. It's actually something we've got a staff meeting coming up this weekend, and we're going to talk a little bit through those 14 habits
Yeah.
that we call for the art of coaching. Right? It's not just about being really good at teaching a squat; it's how you teach that to the group, right? And so, and I will say, we probably why that may be surprising is that I probably have a pretty high standard on what I expect on the floor, but I will say our staff just doesn't disappoint. Our staff, they work extremely hard. You guys make my job extremely easy to be able to manage and lead because and I think the reason is you all value the why behind it. You know why this is important to be able to deliver this product to our people, because ultimately we all just want to continue to help people, right? And a lot of their comfort comes from how we make them feel. And a lot of that, like you're saying, is those small little details. So I really appreciate you sharing that. All right, man. Well, hey, we have gotten more than enough great nuggets from you today. I really appreciate you spending some
It's fun.
time with me. And I'm sure this probably won't be the last time we get to chat on here, but thanks for hanging.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah,
It
dude.
was fun.
All right, man. Hey, we'll see you on the gym floor. I know you're coaching quite a bit of different class hours right now, and you
Yeah,
do a little bit of personal training as well. And so yeah, we're excited to have you,
that's
man.
right.
Thank you.
Friday Night Lights this week. Looking forward
That's
to it.
right. That's
Best night
right.
of the year.
Awesome, man.
All right. We'll talk to you
See you,
later.
dude. Yeah, man.
Thanks.